Welcome to the Archive of Nations documentary series, The Origin of the Ancient Hebrews of Antiquity, where we explore factually the origins of the ancient Hebrews and where they are today. We begin with the Kushites after the cataclysm which created the Mediterranean Sea and buried much of the Tamarian culture underwater, and civilization on this side of the world re-emerged under the Kushites of Meroe. We follow their migrations into India and the Dravidian cultures of Harappan and their admixtures producing the Brahmins and further migrations to Arabia to be known as the Adites of old. We then explore the Canaanites and the miscegenation which was taking place in the region producing racial admixtures from the north and cultural diffusion. Nowhere was this more relevant than ancient Sumer into Babylon, which became a great melting pot. This Fertile Crescent region and the cultures of Sumer, Arabia, the Indus Valley and Egypt took their rulership to the Haru principle of kingship. This produced both indigenous kings and foreign kings such as the Hyksos, who were Carbon Organic Asiatic Tribes returning back to Africa. Being classified as foreigners by the indigenous African rulers, these Asiatic Carbon Organics referred to as blacks were expelled from Egypt with their lepers to Europe via Greece, Italy, Northern Africa and Spain, as well as the administration of Akhenaten, who many believe to be the real Moses story. We explore this further because within our Fallacy of Greece and Rome series we show the connection between Mycenae and Akhenaten, which becomes known as Greco-Egyptians. Now something very overlooked is the admixture which took place by way of tribes from the Americas and related landmasses on the east coast who eventually amalgamated in the melting pots of Harappan, Sumer and the Asiatic regions such as Indonesia, China, etc. These amalgamated tribes of various carbon organic extractions became the 13 tribes of Israel, Ishmael and Midian of the Bible, who were the overseers of solar biology referred to today as lunar astrology. As an amalgamated peoples, these people known as Hebrews due to their migratory lifestyles have been distributed all over the globe from Africa to Europe, the Americas and Asia. The cultures and civilizations they created were hijacked especially by those known today as Khazars or the synagogues of Satan, yet the return of the 144,000 has been foretold, hence the importance of this work. If you like the work we are carrying out, then please like and subscribe to help us grow. Thank you. Now let's begin. Welcome to the Webisode. The Carbon Organic Hebrews are the true founders of Western civilization. Part 2, the Brahmins' Aryan deception of the Kushite Hindus. As we continue on from our previous webisode entitled, The Carbon Organic Hebrews are the true founders of Western civilization. Part 1, the Kushite Hindu African origins of the East. We will continue to explore the background of what is referred to as the Israelite Hebrews of carbon organic extraction. These are the progenitors of the Peloponnese who transported with them on their migrations their divinity, cultures, and technologies. We will also explore their constant intermixing with the hybrid Asian albino in their various incarnations, which created a multitude of hybrid cultural influences, which have impacted the globe in the form of the religions of the West being Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, which began as carbon organic variations of ancient culture and was co-opted by the hybrid albinos as methods of mental warfare. The Indus Valley region is a forgotten part of Afarinka, also known as African legacy, as discussed by earlier authors such as Drusilla Houston and Chaikanta Diop. Make sure to check out our Scholars, Artisans, and Warriors series. Over the last 30 years, there have been plenty of lectures, papers, and now online videos promising to debunk the Aryan invasion theory. The hybrid albino champions of that same Aryan invasion theory have barely noticed this wave of attempted refutations, and certainly haven't felt moved by them to rethink their assumptions. Hybrid albinos and their scholars are, as usual, rewriting history and forcing academia to toe their line that instead of an invasion there was an immigration into India by Aryans, aka white people. For unlike in Europe, where the Aryan is meant to mean white Indo-European speaking, the Indo-European invasion from the steppes in 2800 BCE was a dramatic and sometimes genocidal event. Yet India presents no evidence at all of such foreign conquest in the period considered. So Western academic deceivers shifted to the thesis of a subtle infiltration under the archaeological radar, yet revolutionary in its impact. Unlike the Scythians, Greeks, Huns, or Kushanas, these intruders apparently succeeded in not just conserving their language and religion, but imposing both on the far more numerous natives. In the usual hybrid albino fashion of utilizing words of deception, the word invasion is not about the means used, but the resulting power equation. It's an immigration if the foreigners adapt, but an invasion if they take power. The Indo-European language family was discovered by a French Jesuit living in South India, Gaston Laurent Cordoue. In 1767, he sent a paper to the Academy in Paris in which he showed the close kinship of Sanskrit with Latin and Greek. The French freethinker Voltaire soon publicized it and concluded that European culture and its treasures had originated on the banks of the Ganges. This was taken over by other leading intellectuals like Immanuel Kant, and note that they spontaneously assumed India as the land of origin of the Indo-European family. The Out of India theory is not a recent concoction by Hindu nationalists, as widely alleged, but was thought up by 18th-century Europeans and referred to as indigenous Aryanism, also known as the indigenous Aryans theory and related to the Out of India theory. This is the conviction that the Aryans are indigenous to the Indian subcontinent, and that the Indo-European languages radiated out from a homeland in India into their present locations. In India, the new insight was given currency by Justice William Jones speaking in Kolkata 1786, and within his speech he gave admiration for the Sanskrit language which he deemed superior to Latin and Greek. Indomania was widespread at the time, best represented by Friedrich Schlegel's 1808 book Language and Wisdom of the Indians. However, another consideration started to undermine the dominant position of the Out of India theory. Linguists realized that Sanskrit was not the mother but merely an elder sister of the other branches. There was a distance between the putative language of origin Proto-Indo-European and Vedic Sanskrit, and this translated into a possible distance between the homeland and India. August Schlegel's proposal in 1834 was that the homeland lay in or near the Caucasus Mountains. Biblically minded hybrid albinos in search of a homeland had already thought of Armenia, where Noah's Ark had supposedly landed, in order to lay evidence that the so-called Aryans, falsely translated as the white race, were deemed the descendants of Noah's son Japheth. Successive homeland theories after this would rarely move away sharply from the Caucasus area. Since Gordon Child's choice in 1926 for the Don Volga region, this area has mostly remained the favorite, today known as the Amnaya, Pitgrave, culture. The defense of the Out of India theory was taken up again by Europeans living in India. The most prominent and surprising figure here is Mount Stuart Elphinstone, a proverbial colonialist. After his retirement as governor of Bombay, he wrote a history of India. Among his arguments, the most compelling is that no Hindu scripture gives any indication of a foreign origin. There is no reason whatever for thinking that the Hindus ever inhabited any country but their present. In the mid-19th century, two developments served as nails in its coffin of the Out of India theory. One was the start of linguistic paleontology, the science of discovering a language's habitat from its vocabulary. Thus, it was realized that Proto-Indo-European flourished in a society familiar with wheeled transport. 6 words for the cart and its parts exist throughout the daughter languages and must have existed in Proto-Indo-European. So what is this Out of India, and why do the hybrid albinos, especially among the low vibrational members of their societies referred to as racists, patriots, or ethno-nationalists, continue to cling to an outdated theory that they still present as facts? The two theories which have been advanced is the Indo-Aryan migration theory and the Out of India theory. The Indo-Aryan migration theory suggests that the Vedic vision developed in Central Asia around the region of the Carbon Organic kingdoms of Mitanni, modern-day northern Iraq, Syria, and Turkey, and arrived in India during the decline of the Carbon Organic Indus Valley civilization sometime between 2000 to 1500 BCE. The Out of India theory claims the Carbon Organic Indus Valley civilization, also known as the Harappan civilization, developed the Vedic vision, exported it to Central Asia, and watched it return in a modified form with the hybrid albino Indo-Aryan migration. The Out of India theory is generally dismissed as lacking substantial evidence and essentially agreeing with the Indo-Aryan migration theory that the belief structure developed in Central Asia. In 19th century Indo-European studies, the language of the Rigveda was the most archaic Indo-European language known to scholars, indeed the only records of Indo-European that could reasonably claim to date to the Bronze Age. This primacy of Sanskrit inspired scholars such as Friedrich Schlegel to assume that the locus of the Proto-Indo-European homeland had been in India, with the other dialects spread to the west by historical migration. In the 1850s, Max Muller introduced the notion of two Aryan races, a Western and an Eastern one, which migrated from the Caucasus into Europe and India respectively. Muller dichotomized the two groups, ascribing greater prominence and value to the Western branch. Nevertheless, this Eastern branch of the Aryan race was more powerful than the indigenous Eastern natives, who were easy to conquer. They drew this conclusion due to the factor that there was the appearance of Veda translations which followed the then emerging racial paradigm. Thus, in the rich Vedic description of the Battle of the Ten Kings, it was stated that the enemies were black aboriginals. In reality, the names of the kings and of their tribes, most notably Dasa, Dasu, are Carbon Organic or the Black Tribe. Hindus, whom are also six ether beings, would try to make you believe that the Black Aboriginals or the Black Dasa tribe is a mistranslation of the word. These Hindus are just as demonic and lie like their hybrid albino children. These Hindu authors claim that the characterization as the Black Tribe is a mistranslation and the word Asikni does not refer to a skin color, but to the area they come from, the basin of the Black River, the Vedic name of the Chenab. Yet with a little research, of which the Archive of Nations prioritizes, we find in Hindu mythology, Asikni, meaning the dark one or night, also known as Panchajani and Virani, is a consort of Diksha in the Puranic pantheon. The Sanskrit word Asikni means dark or night. It can also refer to a girl attending woman's apartment. The word is used in the Rigveda, circa 1500 BCE, to describe the river Chenab. By the 1880s, Max Muller's ideas had been adapted by racist ethnologists. For example, as an exponent of race science, colonial administrator Herbert Hope Risley, 1851 to 1911, used the ratio of nose width to height to divide Indian people into Aryan and Dravidian races, as well as 7 castes. When similarities between Sanskrit, Greek and Latin were discovered by William Jones, a suggestion of monogenesis, single origin, was formulated for these languages as well as their speakers. In the latter part of the 19th century, it was thought that language, culture, and race were interrelated, and the notion of biological race came to the forefront. The presumed Aryan race, which originated the Indo-European languages, was prominent among such races, and was deduced to be further subdivided into European Aryans and Asian Aryans, each with their own homelands. Max Muller, who translated the Rigveda during 1849 to 1874, postulated the lie of an original homeland for all Aryans in Central Asia, from which a northern branch migrated to Europe and a southern branch to India and Iran. The Aryans were presumed to be fair-complexioned Indo-European speakers who conquered the dark-skinned Dasas of India. The upper castes, particularly the Brahmins, were thought to be of Aryan descent, whereas the lower castes and Dalits, known as untouchables, were thought to be the descendants of Dasas. The Aryan theory served politically to suggest a common ancestry and dignity between the Indians and the British. Keshab Chunder Sen spoke of British rule in India as a reunion of parted cousins. Indian nationalist Bal Gangadhar Tilak endorsed the antiquity of Rigveda, dating it to 4500 BCE. He placed the homeland of the Aryans somewhere close to the North Pole. From there, Aryans were believed to have migrated south in the post-glacial age, branching into a European branch that relapsed into barbarism and an Indian branch that retained the original, superior civilization. Christian missionaries such as John Muir and John Wilson highlighted what they saw as the oppression of lower castes by upper castes, which they attributed to the Aryan invasions. Jayadaba Phule argued that the Dasas and Sudras were indigenous to the land, whereas Brahmins were Aryan and outsiders. The Theosophical Society held that the Aryans were indigenous to India, but that they were also the progenitors of the European civilization. The society saw a dichotomy between the spiritualism of India and the materialism of Europe. In books such as The Myth of the Aryan Invasion of India and In Search of the Cradle of Civilization, 1995, Frawley criticizes the 19th century racial interpretations of Indian prehistory, such as the theory of conflict between invading hybrid albinos falsely referred to as Aryans and Dravidians. Graham Hancock in 2002 quotes Frawley's historical work extensively for the proposal of highly evolved ancient civilizations prior to the end of the last glacial period, including in India. The idea of an Aryan invasion was fueled by the discovery of the Indus Valley, Harappan, civilization, which declined around the period of the Indo-Aryan migration, suggesting a destructive invasion. This argument was developed by the mid-20th century archaeologist Mortimer Wheeler, who interpreted the presence of many unburied corpses found in the top levels of Mohenjo-Daro as the victims of conquests. He famously stated that the Vedic god Indra stands accused of the destruction of the Indus civilization,